Or good morning, depending on where you are. Thanks for being here today at one of our Chord Connect series. My name is Dan Egan. I am the board liaison for Chord to the Chord Connect series, and very excited to have this session presented by multiple members of our community as well as people from AAMC with ERS. And so with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Alexis Pelletier-Bouy, who can do some intros to the session.
Thank you, Dr. Egan. I am Alexis Pelletier-Bouy. I am from Cooper University Hospital, and I'm the Chord Board of Directors liaison to the Application Process Improvement Committee. Also joining us from our Chord APIC team is Liz Worley from Penn State. She is our immediate past chair for the Application Process Improvement Committee. And our AAMC and Thalamus team will be introducing themselves, but we do want to give them a huge thank you for providing us with this data and collaborating with us to present this data to all of you today so that we can help you plan effectively for your upcoming interview season. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Patrick Fritz.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Pelletier-Bouy and Dr. Egan, and thank you everybody for joining today. My name is Patrick Fritz. I am the Senior Director for ERIS at the AAMC, and I'm joined by my colleagues, Dr. Dana Dunleavy, who heads the research and development work at the AAMC, Michelle Osterheld, Director of ERIS Engagement, and Dr. Jason Remenick, the CEO of Thalamus. So we're going to be talking data and a few other things today, but we're pleased overall with what we're seeing. The improved number of applicants and the interest in emergency medicine, overall declining applications, and by that I mean addressing the over-applying issue by applicants, and an increasingly diverse applicant pool. And so I'm going to talk to you for a few minutes today about ERIS and the AAMC, the progress we've made the past few years, and where we're headed. And we know that the Chord leadership and folks have made a decision to explore other services, but we also know the decision lies with you all. And so we just thought it'd be important to share with you the direction of AAMC today. So I'll share an update on ERIS and our progress and priorities. We'll have some slides on the data, provide an update on the ERIS Thalamus partnership, and then hang around for any questions that you have. So first, some of you may or may not know that ERIS is part of the AAMC, and the AAMC is made up of three groups that support academic medicine. One, our membership organization that supports our constituents and their professional work through 22 affinity groups. Our advocacy and think tank arm that actively advocates for GME positions, student financial aid, NIH and HRSA funding, and is pushing back on the anti-DEI and medical school legislation currently underway. Our policy teams lead the competency-based medical education efforts and the Residence Readiness Initiative, as well as the AAMC's efforts to diversify the physician workforce. Our services organization provides services from MCAT program and AMCAS to the Visiting Students Program, VSLO, and ERIS. Data and funding from these services are critical to supporting our advocacy, research, and mission-related work. And I think this is what makes ERIS and AAMC unique, is that we invest back into academic medicine. So how does ERIS fit into this? ERIS supports the learner journey through the transition to residency. It's not simply a transactional step, but rather part of an overall offering through the AAMC and others. We're focused on strengthening support to applicants, programs, institutions, and specialties. ERIS was built by and accountable to the whole community. These products were not built in isolation. All of the recent updates to my ERIS came from stakeholder input, feedback, and research, including 40+ working group meetings, with representatives from emergency medicine, as well as input from thousands through surveys, one-on-one meetings, and focus groups. So some of these other supporting products around ERIS are Careers in Medicine, used by 300,000 people annually, including 21,000 USMD M4s. And this helps inform them about specialty-specific information, their specialty profiles, and applicants can take a series of assessments to find out how what's important to them aligns with specialty values. The AAMC Fee Assistance Program provides more than $26 million annually in support of those most in need. And this was recently expanded to ERIS, and there's more than 4,000 ERIS applicants who are eligible for fee assistance this year. Fee assistance provides assistance for pre-meds to receive reduced MCAT and AMCAS fees. And there's no other program like this. The MDs, DOs, US IMGs are all eligible. Residency Explorer. More than 100,000 users this year, spending on average 37 minutes exploring program-specific information with source-verified data supported by multiple organizations. The goal is to empower medical students and applicants to explore and identify residency programs where they are competitive candidates and to find programs that fit their career interests and personal needs. And then finally, the Residence Readiness Survey. The AAMC offers a process providing feedback to medical schools about the performance for their graduates for continuous quality improvement. Early in the PGY 1 year, program directors are invited to respond to a survey via GME track about the readiness of their residents. And this will assist schools in assessing their effectiveness in preparing students for residency. Two other areas not on here, advocacy and research. Obviously, we advocate for GME positions and research within the transition to residency. So this is just a snapshot of the value-added services around ARIS. So I want to acknowledge some of the challenges in the past. I came to this position a little over 2 years ago. There were a number of long-time challenges persisted. Too many applications, no transparency or data to make decisions for applicants, advisors, programs. Sorry, the sun here. Programs, and a lack of efficient software to help support holistic review. And while these challenges continue to linger, the environment was also changing. Groups were trying to innovate approaches on their own. There was growing need to diversify the workforce and improve care for patient outcomes, costs continue to increase for learners. There was an opportunity for leading improvement. And while many of these issues are ongoing to require collaboration across multiple stakeholders and participants, there are areas where ARIS is making progress. So we'll talk about those. So in my first months, I met with a number of PDs, advisors, applicants, DIOs, and others to think about what ARIS can do and where we can align our resources to support the community. We identified 3 key areas. Improve tools to reduce the burden on applicants, programs, advisors, and specialties and institutions. Get data into the hands of everyone to make informed decisions rather than gut feel and blindly applying for applicants. And engage and train and inform the larger community. And we've taken a methodical approach to our enhancements of this evolution. In tools, we updated the ARIS application to be more transparent with program signals, geographic preferences. We know not everybody uses those. New experiences to align better with holistic review. And emergency medicine played a significant role in working with us to make these changes, and we're going to continue to innovate. We talked to numerous software companies to identify the best partner for getting improved tools into the hands of programs. We partnered with Thalamus. They're the leader and solely focus on the GME community. And we have a shared goal to drive change and improvements in the transition to residency. As of today, 37 OB programs have actually switched back to using Thalamus. The success of our pilot with 3 specialties to provide Cortex for free, this is the replacement tool, the PDWS, has been a huge success. And we plan to expand access to Cortex to all programs. In data, we're delivering data back to all groups. Applicants and advisors have better data through Residency Explorer and new reports for deans to better advise applicants. DIOs now have institutional views. You no longer have to send up your reports and data in spreadsheets. And programs have program level view through Thalamus Cerebellum. We plan to expand Cerebellum to include specialty level data that you'll see here today. Data has been key to driving improvements in advising and ultimately reducing over application and helping applicants apply to programs where they feel that they can succeed, and applying to fewer programs to reduce costs as well. Finally, in our engagement and research, we continue to research the changes and how we can improve the application itself. And we've hosted successful webinars for EM to reach the potential applicants early in the cycle. More than 600 people registered to the last emergency medicine webinar that we did with you all. And we've worked with other specialties to engage M1s and M3s to build pathway programs. The outcomes of all this is greater transparency on all sides, improved experience for all, reduced applications, and saved costs. So what are we delivering next? We just talked about what we've done, but here's what's coming next. And I told you we're expanding Cortex. I know some of you are just fine with PDWS and you don't have to switch. We are making a plan to make Cortex available to all programs. The data that you see today is going to be part of the next iteration of Cerebellum, and we're adding specialty data to the already standing analytics tool. And we want to work with you all to really understand what are the needs and what other data can we get in your hands and the hands of others across that may be engaged with emergency medicine. We also want to integrate the SLO into Cortex, knowing that you want to keep all the separate SLO standing tool that you have and how we can integrate that into Cortex with our partner Thalamus. And then MyARIS flexibility. We heard from Cord leadership that you may not want geographic preferences, and we're looking at ways we can refine the current setup and maybe not to have this section for specific specialties. And a number of other specialties have talked with us about this as well as refining personal statements and other pieces of the application. One area that we are continuing to look at and evaluate for next year is publications. And so with that, I mean, these are just a few areas where we'd like to work with you all and work with the larger community as well. And happy to answer questions after, but I'll turn this over to Dr. Worley now for the data.
All right, thanks, Patrick. So this part is going to be a little similar to the initial application stats that we presented at the Cord Town Hall about 2 weeks ago. But now it's updated to represent the first 2 weeks of ARIS being open to programs. So for this year, it opened up to programs on Wednesday, September 25th through Wednesday, October 9th. And it's the same first 2 weeks of data for each of the preceding application cycles. So this is really, truly an apples to apples comparison of the same data points for these 6 years. And as demonstrated by the blue bars, you can see that this is the largest number of total applicants that we have seen in emergency medicine in 6 years. And we had a big round of applause for that at the town hall. And looking at the yellow line, total application numbers are still performing strongly as well. But I'll dive a little deeper into that momentarily. Next slide, please. There we go. This is the raw data from the preceding slide. And I just felt that the numbers really, truly speak for themselves. In addition to the overall growth of applicants, we saw growth in each applicant type, with the largest gains in allopathic applicants, followed by osteopathic applicants, and finally IMG numbers that are really not terribly different from last year. Let's see. Is the animation going to pop up? Next slide. Oh, there we go. All right. And several years ago, we really noted the peak in the over-application phenomenon that Patrick was referring to. And we saw applicants applying to an average of 60 or more programs. And we really hoped for, as a specialty, for improvement in this area. And recently, we've seen the average number of applications per applicant trend down. And while this is likely multifactorial, we think it's a much more balanced approach for our applicants. Next slide. And we're familiar with a similar slide from last year's application cycle. And while the applicant pool remains roughly 1/3 each for our MD, DO, and IMG applicants, we're starting to see a little bit of divergence this year compared to last year. Next slide. And just to look at it a little differently, this is a year-by-year comparison of the different applicant types, where we have seen a general uptrend over the 2023, 2024, and 2025 application cycles. Next slide. Now this slide is kind of busy, but it represents cross-specialty application data for the 2025 application cycle, so this year. And what I want to highlight here is that emergency medicine is in the top 6 of all of the specialties listed. The leaders above us are primary care based, so internal medicine, family medicine, pediatrics, or therefore prelim year and transitional year programs. Next slide. Taking the data from the last slide and looking just at emergency medicine, this content represents those applying to just EM, which is the encircled data here on the left, or EM and one or more other specialty, which is all of the other non-bolded numbers. Looking at MD and DO applicants, the top other specialties are anesthesiology, family medicine, internal medicine categorical, surgery categorical, and transitional year programs. And they're all in relatively low numbers. And if you look at the IMG applicants, the top other specialties are family medicine, IM categorical, IM prelim year, pediatrics, and transitional year programs. So we've heard a lot of rumors and or assumptions from people in recent years, and I'd like to dispel the rumor. We're not the second choice specialty for the very large number of our applicants. This is particularly true for our MD and DO applicants compared to many IMG applicants who often cross-apply broadly. Now, one more busy slide for you. Thank you. But I want to highlight here the important points. The second to last column on the right represents applicants who apply to emergency medicine only. And the last column on the right represents applicants who apply to emergency medicine and one or more other specialties. And what you see here in red are that IMG applicants are primarily not applying to emergency medicine only. Greater than 70% of the IMG applicants are applying to EM and at least one, if not more, other specialties. And as shown in blue, you can see that the large majority of our MD and DO applicants are applying to emergency medicine only. We're seeing 60 to 70+% of DO applicants and greater than 80% of our MD applicants only applying to emergency medicine. So just to reiterate what I said with the last slide, emergency medicine is the one and only choice of specialty for the large majority of our applicant pool. And now I'm going to turn it over to Alexis.
Thanks, Liz. All right, so I'm gonna move a bit into the demographics of our applicant pool and some trends over the past few years. And I am happy to report that we are seeing more individuals who identify as women applying to emergency medicine, with women comprising about 45.7% of our applicant pool this year. Men comprise about 53.9%, another gender identity 0.25%, and 0.09% were unknown. We have been seeing the relative proportion of women applying to EM increase over the years, with women representing about 38% of the applicant pool 5 years ago. So great news. Next slide, please. This slide here shows us what our applicants look like in terms of race and ethnicity over the past 5 years. It's a little bit of a busy slide, and some of the options have changed over the years as well, which makes some direct comparisons challenging, but I'll kind of walk you through it. For example, Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin used to be an option. This was changed this year to just Hispanic or Latino. Also, other was changed to some other race or ethnicity, and we now have a new category as well that applicants can choose Middle Eastern or North African. So those changes explain why you see that blue bar coming across the screen. You can see the percent changes from year to year represented here as well, with growth in green and drops in applicant numbers in red. But you can see over the past 2 years, our specialty has seen increases in applicants who identify as American Indian or Alaska Native, Asian, Black or African American, and Hispanic or Latino. Next slide, please. I think this bar graph gives us a little bit better of an idea of what this looks like in terms of proportions or percentages of our applicant pool. White applicants can be seen in green on the top of each bar, and you can see that that percentage of the applicant pool has been decreasing over the past couple years. The following dark blue color in the 2023 and 2024 bars on the left and in the middle represents applicants identifying as other. And like I said, this was changed to some other race or ethnicity, which is now in dark gray on the bar graph on the right for 2025. You can see that this proportion of applicants has significantly decreased. Some of that, though, may be explained by the new addition of Middle Eastern North African, which is now seen just below that in dark blue. Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin, again, that was changed between 2023, 2024, and then changed in 2025. So in 23 and 24, that was in our purple bar, and then that's now in teal as just Hispanic or Latino in our bar in 2025. Gray just below that is Black or African American for all three, Asian in blue, and for all three American Indian or Alaska Native. But overall, I think you can visually see that the diversity of our EM applicant pool has really significantly changed or has been increasing over the past couple years, which is a great thing. All right, and now I am going to turn it over to Dana Dunleavy, who's going to cover program signaling.
Thanks, Alexis. We're going to dig into a little bit of data from the 25 cycle on program signals and geographic preferences. And Alexis, I'll invite you to join me on a couple of these slides. The next slide shows the average number of signals sent by applicants over the last 3 cycles. In emergency medicine, most applicants continue to utilize the maximum number of signals available, regardless of whether the specialty offered 5 or 7 signals. And this finding is consistent with what we've observed in other specialties as well. We also observed that there are no meaningful differences by applicant type in the number of signals used in emergency medicine. For the third year in a row, we've observed, next slide, please, Patrick. Yep, you can sit right here for a second. So for the third year in a row, we've observed that signals are not uniformly distributed across programs. Just as some programs receive more applications, some also receive more signals. And this can mean that programs may use signals differently, given the proportion of signals in their applicant pool. This slide here shows the distribution of signals received by programs as of last week. And the first figure shows the distribution of signals in dark blue overlaid on the distribution of applications for each program that participated in signaling this year. As you can see, some programs receive more applications than others, and some receive more signals than others. And in general, the number of signals received and the number of applications received are positively correlated. The second figure shows the adjusted number of signals received by programs. So this is the percent of signals received relative to the number of applications received by programs. Most emergency medicine programs receive signals from less than 20% of their applicant pools. Now, of course, with your large applicant pools, many of you are receiving at or more signals than you actually have the capacity to interview, even with 7 signals or 5 signals this year. On average, programs received about 77 signals, but you can see from the numbers in the blue box that the range of signals received by programs is quite large. And in fact, this year it ranged from a low of 10 signals at one program to a high of 316. Now, on the next slide, we're going to zoom out and look at the concentration of signals across EM programs over the last few years. This bar chart shows the percentage of all signals received from applicants by 10% of emergency medicine programs. So as you're looking at these bars, what you can take away is that about 23% of all signals sent by applicants were received by 10% or 27 emergency medicine programs over the last 2 cycles. And about 28% of those signals sent were received by about 10% of EM programs in the 23 cycle. Next, we're going to talk about the relationship between signals and interview invitation. And because interview invitations are in the process of being sent out, for the next few slides, I'm going to show you data from prior cycles. Okay, so this slide probably looks familiar to most of you. It shows the relationship between sending a signal and interview invitation rates from the 23 cycle and the 24 cycle. In both cases, analyses were conducted at the program level, and then they were aggregated using these box plots to the overall specialty level. So I'm going to focus and review the findings on the figure on the right side of the screen, which is the 2024 data. And findings from last year suggest that on average, sending a signal increased interview invitation rates substantially, from 26% to about 54% compared to not signaling. There was little overlap between these two distributions for folks who signaled and folks who did not signal, further suggesting that in emergency medicine, even with the small number of signals, programs placed a large emphasis on program signals during the review process. Another important point here is that there's still considerable variability in programs' use of signals, as evidenced by the size of those distributions. And you can see in looking at those individual box plots that interview invitation rates on average range from about 34% to about 74% for folks who signaled, and about 13 to 43% for folks who didn't signal. So this is really important, especially when you're talking to applicants or thinking about how to use signals in your process, because what it's telling us is that sending a signal doesn't guarantee an interview. It's a really strong predictor of one, but it does not guarantee an interview. Likewise, while not signaling decreases the odds of interview invitation, it doesn't preclude an invitation in most programs. Average interview rates for those who did not signal declined in the 24 compared to the 23 cycle. And one hypothesis for that is because you all did offer a larger number of signals last year than you did the prior year. So it will be really interesting to look at the results in the next few weeks to see if your interview invitation rates look more similar to what we saw in the 23 cycle. Alexis, did you want to make any additional comments on this slide?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that the reason why we have decided to stay with a small signaling approach in emergency medicine is because of this slide, essentially. When you get into a larger signaling approach, which a lot of other specialties or some specialties have chosen, that red bar on the right, it really goes very close down to 0%. So we thought it was important that our applicants still have the opportunity to interview at programs without sending that signal. We thought that with where our specialty is right now, that was, the best approach for us. So people are still getting interviews without a signal, as Dana said, but obviously the signal definitely helps our applicants.
Yep, absolutely. All right, the next slide, in just a moment, we're going to look at some results from last year, looking at the relationship between program signals, geographic preferences, and interview invitation. And before we look at those data, I just want to give you guys a quick reminder. The purpose of introducing geographic preferences was to improve standardization and fairness in the review process. Before the geographic preference section questions were introduced, you all had to rely primarily on inferences from the application as to whether someone was actually interested in the region of the country where your program is located. And most often people reported doing that by looking at hometown or looking at medical school location. And we know that those are not always reliable indicators of someone's current preference. Likewise, we know that folks often utilize networks such as an advisor or other trusted mentors making phone calls on their behalf, and that obviously has some equity issues around it because not everybody has access to mentors or advisors who can make those phone calls. So we introduced geographic preferences a few years ago. Applicants could indicate up to 3 geographic preferences, and they could also indicate no preference, indicating that they're willing to go anywhere in the country for their training. Applicants could also write a short essay response explaining their preference or their lack of preference. And we've heard anecdotally that those short answer responses are really quite useful for programs, especially those that may be located in a U.S. Census division that doesn't quite capture the feeling of the location that works best for their program. And they're especially useful when applicants provide specific information indicating why they're interested in a particular division. So the slide that Patrick has on screen right now is a methodology slide. And it shows that there were a total of 280 emergency medicine programs in the 24 cycle. And of those, 146 participated in program signaling and made geographic preferences available during the review process. So remember, ARIS does offer you the flexibility to screen out or prevent your reviewers from looking at geographic preference should you decide that that's not important in your review process. The analysis that we did here is based on a final analytic sample of 129 emergency medicine programs, representing about 88% of all the programs that were eligible because they participated in signaling and geographic preferences. And that also represents about 46% of the total EM population. This next slide, which is a figure with 2 line graphs here, shows the median percentage of, go down. There you go. Thank you. We need to, I think it seems like there might be a little bit of a delay, so I'm gonna just keep talking and hope that it catches up. It looks right to me right now. So this figure shows the median percentage of all applicants, MD, DO, and IMG applicants who were invited to interview based on their program signal status and their geographic preference status in the 2024 cycle. Again, all these analyses are conducted at the program level, and then they're aggregated to the specialty. The numbers in the boxes are the median predicted probability, or the 50th percentile, if you will. And the dotted lines show the 10th and the 90th percentile of predicted probability. So together, the box and the dotted lines can really give you a sense of a distribution. Here are a couple key takeaways on this slide. First, as you have already seen, signaling has a larger effect on interview invitation than geographic preference. And you can see that pretty clearly here because the darker blue line is well above the green line, regardless of the geographic preference. Another key takeaway is that having an aligned geographic preference has a larger effect than having no geographic preference and having an unaligned preference. And you can see that as you look from left to right across the screen, and you can see the interview invitation rate slowly go up pretty steadily from unaligned to no preference, and then over to an aligned preference. Now, I want to point out one thing as you take a look and think about that finding. Remember that this analysis is aggregated for all applicants. And so that means that we're combining results across applicant type. This is important because IMGs are actually more likely to report no preference than their MD and their DO peers. So as you're looking at the interview conversion rates for no geographic preference, just keep in mind that those might be slight underestimates for your DO and your MD applicants because they are underrepresented in this sample. And then two more small points, and then I'll turn it over back to you, Alexis. The next one is that although we do see main effects here for program signal and geographic preference, we also see a small interaction whereby having an aligned geographic preference and sending a program signal has the greatest return. And you can see that looking at the far right blue circle, where the median predicted probability of interview invitation rate is highest at 62% for someone who's signaled and has an aligned geographic preference. And my last point here is that, again, there's wide variation in how programs used signals and how they used geographic preferences last year. And you can see that by looking at those dotted lines. I think this is really important to emphasize because, again, sending a signal or sending a geographic preference is not deterministic. It's one point in the application process. And we can see that programs are using those sources of information along with other information differently by looking at these data. Alexis, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dana. I do want to thank you very much for pointing out the fact that IMG applicants are more likely to choose no geographic preference, and that may be at play a little bit here and why we're seeing not much of a change between geo preference not aligned and no geo preference when people did not send a program signal, just like 15 to 16%, and just a slight increase as well when they did send a signal. However, I do want to just remind our programs out there that no geographic preference is different than the geographic preference not aligned. No geographic preference means that that applicant is willing to go anywhere. They're looking for the best fit program, or they're looking for, you know, a specific thing within a program that has nothing to do with a geographic preference. So these are still high yield applicants. Please still consider these applicants highly. It is different when the geo preference is not aligned. When it's not aligned, what you will see is a blank spot in that area where it says geographic preference. That's all I had to say for this. We can move on.
All right. So hi, everyone. Jason Remenick, CEO and founder of Thalamus, and a big thank you to Cord for having me back again, and to our AAMC colleagues for co-presenting with us here. I'm here to talk about an interview update for ARIS 2025, and this is 2025 current season data that we wanted to talk about today, and other things that we were working on as part of the collaboration. But essentially, in terms of the interview update, there's over 8,000 GME programs at over 800 institutions that opted into Thalamus this year through our collaboration with the AAMC and ARIS for ARIS 2025, including 90% of all residency programs. Since that time, we've had over 20 million authorizations through the new API that was built between AAMC and Thalamus to move data between our systems. And we've sent out over 315,000 interview invitations since the start of the residency recruitment season as of 9 a.m. this morning. In terms of EM specific statistics, in terms of Thalamus use, 282 programs are listed as participating in ARIS for this season. 262 of them have opted in to use Thalamus, which is a 92.9% opt-in rate. 243 of those programs currently have interview positions configured on their interview calendar. Of those, 177 programs have already scheduled 21,470 interviews to date. And so there's right now of positions that are configured, 21,119 or 49.6% of open positions remaining in emergency medicine, knowing that today is the common release interview day for EM as well. So next slide, please. One of the benefits that the community gets through the partnership with the AAMC is access to Cerebellum, which is our data and analytics dashboard. This is what rolled ERIS Analytics for DIOs. Those reports rolled into Cerebellum, and Cerebellum became the main reporting tool for this season. This is a graph that all of you have access to on your Cerebellum platform, and this is just a good way to show the data that we're providing back to the community at the program level. This is showing when invitations were sent this season. And as you can see, it started on the first day of the season on September 25th in emergency medicine and continues to today. We expect a very steep line today, given that today is the common release as well. But a lot of invites have gone out so far. And so this is just one kind of snapshot of up-to-date data for the season that you all have access to, and we'll talk a little bit more about Cerebellum today as well. So next slide, please, Patrick. One of the real benefits to the community and one of the real drivers of the collaboration with the AAMC has been the ability to provide data analytics and research to the community. I've talked to the core community before, given the match outcomes of the prior years. And also we wrote this paper alongside Dr. Peltier-Bouie and several others in the specialty like Dr. Bond and Dr. Hobson and Dr. Hayes, looking at kind of the reasons why that this was happening, diving into interview data, diving into application data, diving into match data. There was data provided by the NRMP for this study as well. And what we found from this study, which I'm sure everyone is well aware of, is that the number of students entering the match in the prior years, for those years where the match rate was low in EM, was that there were less students entering the match than there were positions in the match. And so obviously there's really exciting data that was presented today that showed that EM has rebounded rather significantly, which is awesome. I think the important piece here, though, is that one of the things we're looking to do with this collaboration is to provide more and more data to the community to be able to understand what the application season looks like on a minute-by-minute basis in as near real time as possible, to provide you that data to understand what's going on in the specialty with each application season. That's why we showed the interview kind of release slide on the last slide, and are providing more interview statistics as well. We're working a lot with our AAMC and ERIS colleagues to bring more data to the community overall. And so next slide, please. And so there's lots of future data and research opportunities through the collaboration. We have been speaking to a lot of the EM community. We have heard what the needs of the community are. Patrick alluded to many of these as well. But one of the things we're really committed to through the collaboration is specialty-specific dashboards that provide data, like when interviews are going out, that could be accessible to programs. There could be an applicant-facing view. There could be a UME-facing view as well. Really looking into that cross-specialty data, which I know is a big interest to the community. There's been requests for earlier access to demo or sandbox versions of Cortex and Thalamus Core, and to be able to see all of our updates year over year. And that is a big component for us for this year. Over the past year, we spent a lot of time building the API that I mentioned, as I mentioned, is moving 20 million authorizations over the last several weeks between the two systems. And we hear more data, and we hear more incorporation of slows and other pieces. And so how do we build that into Cortex? That would be something that the community is interested in. We've had this conversation with leadership multiple times over the last few years that this is a possibility should EM want to move towards this. We've also heard the ask for more AI and machine learning, knowing what the burden is in terms of reviewing applications and how can we leverage technology to more accurately and more streamlined and efficiently go through applications. And so one of the big new features in Cortex this year is our transcript normalization tool. This was built through a collaboration and an innovation grant through the AAMC as part of our partnership. And we worked with their selection team and our team as well to build a new methodology, which I've provided the link to at the bottom there, which everyone's welcome to look at. But essentially, we're using OCR as it's always been done in Cortex through a new LLM model that builds candidate structured transcripts, which you can see on kind of the diagram presented there on the left side of the screen, that pulls out grades. Those grades then get into an ensemble vote. Anything we're unsure of goes through a manual human review, and that trains and learns and trains the algorithm to be even smarter going forward. And what that's resulted in is for applicants in Cortex now, there are percentiles as well as grades that are presented, as well as the distributions of those grades to provide more comparison within and across various medical schools. And so we've had some questions is how did you get to the sample that you've gotten to this year, and what does that look like overall? This was version 1. This has been released in beta this year based on the initial work that we've done. We're continuing to train the model. The methodology really goes through how we came to how this came to be and what it is today. It goes through the sample set. In this first round, we tried to support as many US DO and MD schools as possible, as well as several high-frequency international schools that apply. There's, of course, thousands of medical schools around the country. It opens up other questions, including countries where medical school is 7 to 8 years long and has 8 to 10 different internal medicine courses. And what do you do with those grades? There's lots of schools that are pass-fail. There's lots of schools that have very many different distributions as well. But we're really excited about this work, and we're really excited to push it forward. We've had other questions. Well, can you do things with LORs or personal statements related to sentiment analysis or thematic analysis or any of these pieces as well? And the answer is yes, and it's something we're really leaning into as well. We started with the transcript normalization because it's more of an objective metric. Academic metrics, of course, are only one component of holistic review, but we wanted to start with something more objective and then move into other elements as well. The other big pieces we get and asked from the community as well, there are a lot of letters written by AI now, and there are a lot of personal statements written by AI now as well. And so can Cortex, Thalamus, the collaboration with the AAMC, can you identify letters that or personal statements that were written by AI? The short answer is yes. The longer answer is probably not right now, in the sense that as AI is starting to become more and more of a tool and develop and mature, AI checkers are not as robust yet. I've spoken with several pediatric behavioral and development specialists, as well as just neuroscientists and others as well. Human beings that would fall on the autism spectrum have a much higher false positive rate of having their writing picked up as AI when it isn't. And so these are a lot of the conversations we're having with the community overall. We're excited to continue having those conversations. We're excited with the innovation that we're bringing with the AAMC and our ARIS colleagues, and also really just excited about the data and research opportunities that exist. It looks like 93% of EM interviews may be done in Thalamus this year, which gives us a really great data set to work with the specialty and work with the leadership, along with AAMC with the application data to really provide a robust data set. So that's it from me. Oh, there's one more slide for me. We're obviously in the heart of the season right now. I know there's a lot of people that have questions, especially on the common release day. We do have 24/7 support at Thalamus. We have lots of free resources. Several individuals and the majority of our support team have GME experience and are really passionate about this community and supporting this community. We have live trainings, we have recorded trainings, we have user guides, knowledge bases as well. And so, yeah, anytime you need us, click that help button in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. Our average response time, which we're continuing to track even as we continue to grow and scale, is 5 to 10 minutes each month, usually closer to the 5-minute side. So if you need us, we'll be there for you. More than happy to help. And that is now it from me. And a big thank you for letting me be here today.
All right, I think we have some time for Q&A. So I'm just going to kick it off with the first question, because I'm sure that's the million-dollar question. How are the planned ERIS expansions and integration into Thalamus going to be affected by Cord wanting to move to residency CAS is the question. So I do want to say that, yes, we have committed to collaborating with Residency CAS on creating a new application for emergency medicine, and we are still working with them to create that. We want everybody's feedback in that. But at the same time, our specialty and our board has not made a decision yet on whether or not that is the best choice for our specialty. We really want to gather as much data as possible, at least over the next few months, if not longer, in looking at what has OBGYN's experience been with residency CAS? What is the experience with the integration of Thalamus with ERIS and the continued offerings and new offerings that are now being proposed as well, such as having Cortex available to all programs. So these are all things that we are still considering. For those who were not available at the Cord Town Hall at ASAP, we did discuss for a while about how we came to the decision of collaborating with Residency CAS, but we do have an advisory board that has representatives from all different organizations within emergency medicine and all of our stakeholders. And we are planning to meet with the AAMC in addition to continuing to meet with Residency CAS and really working together to figure out what is best for our specialty. At the end of the day, that's all that we want, is to make this job easier for everybody on this call and make it easier for our applicants and cheaper for our applicants as well. So, like we've said in our past communications, no decisions have 100% been made. Everything's still being taken into consideration. We want your input. There will be focus groups. There is a webinar tomorrow about more the decision-making process in deciding to collaborate with Residency CAS and giving you an idea of what that might look like. So please attend that if you're available. And then we will be sending out communication shortly for available focus groups so that all of you can have your voices heard, because it is incredibly important that you have a voice in this. A lot of changes have happened where you haven't had a voice over the past few years, and are upcoming where you don't have much of a voice. We really want your opinions and your input for this. All right, and we will move on to the other questions. This one might be a good one for Dana, because I don't know if we've looked at interview acceptance rates for programs in EM that receive the majority of signals. They're curious if there's a threshold phenomenon such that once a program receives a certain number of signals, then applicants who don't signal those programs have a close to zero chance of getting an interview. So I'm not sure, have we looked at that in specialties with a smaller signaling approach, but maybe those particular programs receive a very high number of signals?
Yep, we have started to look at this. So using data from the 24 cycle, we are exploring a different methodology than what I showed you with the box plots. And in this new approach, what we're doing is we are accounting for multiple different pieces of application data, including the ratio of signals to applications. And those are things like whether a student has ever failed the step 1 or level 1 exams, what their score was on the step 2 CK exam, the program signals, the alignment between a medical school of graduation, as well as the location of the program, and this an interaction with between signals and the ratio of signals to applications. And we've done this so far in 6 specialties: emergency medicine, using your last year's data when you had 7 signals; gen surg, where they had 5; ortho and neuro, where they had large number of signals, as well as OB-GYN and dermatology, where they use the 2-tiered approach. And across the board in all 6 of those specialties, what we found is that your hypothesis is correct, that the effect of sending a signal is diminished somewhat when a program receives a lot of signals. And so basically what that means is that essentially what you suggested is happening. What we're seeing is that for programs that receive all signals, they are in general inviting, for the most part, only folks who signal, and that happens often, even in emergency medicine last year, where there was a small number of signals. And so although the protection of small number of signals relative to large number of signals is there, it's really about how a program uses the signal, not necessarily how many signals. And so even with large number of signals, especially in programs that are receiving large volume, they still can be used inappropriately.
Thank you. All right. This next one is probably best for Jason. So when using Cortex for screening, if you apply a hold or reject to the student, how do you get that to Thalamus Core or ERIS? To mass email these students, you have to then create another list in ERIS because you can't upload all applicants into Thalamus.
Yeah, this is a great question. And this is a big feature request that we've gotten now kind of post Thalamus and AAMC API integration. Historically, Cortex was built to be a supplement to the PDWS. It still acts that way. As that use has increased, more and more programs are asking for ways to send rejections or emails to applicants. We are working with the community to figure out the best way to do that because the applicants are not applying to Cortex. And so we are working with the best way to figure out how to send those emails. It's something we have on our roadmap for next season. We're taking feedback from the community on how best to do that. But we also just want to make sure that the applicant knows that it's going to be coming from that, or a way to work with the AAMC, just so it doesn't come as a surprise to applicants that, oh, I got an email from Cortex, or I got an email at Thalamus that I'm on hold or not going to be considered further by this program. And so more operationally and process-wise, what does that look like? In general, we really love working with the community and love getting feedback like this because we then build it into the products. We've been working with several in emergency medicine, like Dr. Fallon, to figure out better ways for Thalamus Holistic Review to provide the statuses. We rolled that out last week after some feedback over a few days. And so we're consistently taking feedback and building additional features and updates into the products to serve the needs of the community as we continue to grow into this collaboration. So great question, and look forward to continuing to build that out.
Thanks, Jason.
Yeah.
All right, next one, maybe for Patrick. So Patrick mentioned OB programs coming back to Thalamus this cycle. Do we know why this is happening? Are there missing features or other reasons for not managing interviews in residency casts?
Yeah, I don't. I'll probably have to turn to Jason because these programs reached out directly to Thalamus, so they're still using it, but they're not using the residency cast. They're using Thalamus, and I think there was a webinar yesterday for roughly those 37 or so. But Jason will know kind of more detail.
Yeah, no, thank you, Patrick, and thanks, Alexis. What we're hearing from OB programs is they are missing some things, particularly on the interview scheduling side, that they really would like to be there, and they've used Thalamus in the past, and we've worked in their common release interview date, particularly around waitlisting, rescheduling, the ability to lock dates, and lots of the other kind of more advanced features from our overall interview scheduler. We did host a webinar yesterday for 30-ish OB GYN attendees to talk about this and get them set up for this season. They were very appreciative, and I think the big piece as the application space continues to evolve is that Thalamus is and is here to support this community and support the program, support the applicants. We are building a lot of integration and features with our colleagues at the AAMC and ERIS. We really believe we have a great solution, and we're seeing that in programs coming back to Thalamus or staying with Thalamus because they used us last year as well. So
And just to add, those programs are not getting it through the ERIS collaboration. They're paying for it directly to Thalamus, so it's not part of the ERIS benefits that they receive.
Yeah.
All right, next question also for Jason. I have been told that there's several aspects of Thalamus that are not functional yet this year. For example, my interviewed applicants with scores are not showing up on my rank list. I was told this is a known problem undergoing investigation, but it's been a couple of weeks. When can we expect a resolution?
Sure. No, great question. I appreciate the feedback. I'd have to look back on this specific overall ticket. I can say that the rank lists are working, and there are most elements of Thalamus that are quite functional this year. So I'm not sure where that would have come from. With regard to if someone is having an experience and an issue, we'd be happy to follow up with you. I'll take this back to my team as well and figure out what the specific issue is, but we resolve issues very, very quickly. It's the beginning of the season, but we're working to resolve matters like that as well. We know how important these features are to programs. We have a lot of programs using the software and being very successful. And as I mentioned, 315,000 invites plus, and lots of people being scored and interviewed. And so I can circle back on that and figure out when this particular resolution is, but appreciate the feedback as always.
All right, the next question I'll take, but I'm not going to take too long to answer it because it will be covered tomorrow. So the question was, will there be a significant cost savings to applicants if a change to residency CAS is made, and how will this impact applicants that choose or need to apply to more than one type of program? So the anticipated cost reduction is around 30% for applicants. There are options through both ERIS and Residency CAS for those who need fee assistance. And then as far as impacting applicants that choose or need to apply to more than one type of program, we anticipate with how the cost structure works with both ERIS and Residency CAS that it should be similar. But again, it's kind of a long conversation that Tim and Lisa will well, not long, but they'll answer it more tomorrow. I'll quickly answer them. Actually, Liz, do you want to answer the next one? I may have misheard this in Patrick's initial presentation, but has EM and Corden indicated that we would like to move away from using geo preferences? Do you want to cover that, or I can cover that?
I mean, I think we as a specialty find signaling way more beneficial and useful. The general consensus when we've, pulled our own group for presentations at Cord is that GeoPrefs is just not as useful in terms of what we need from our applicants and for what is best for our specialty. Is it going to go away? I think the option as of right now, it still exists. And until that changes, we have that option, but we haven't made a formal decision on GeoPrefs or not.
Yeah, so I do think this is going to be a topic as some of our upcoming focus groups, because I do think there are some people that feel strongly it could potentially muddy the waters when you have both the geo preferences and the program signaling. And some feel that it could potentially hurt applicants as well. And that was kind of what I was worried about when we saw the geo preference data, with those saying that they don't have a geo preference, receiving very similar interview invites to those who had a geo preference that was not aligned. And I really don't want to put any of our applicant groups at a disadvantage. So I think it's something that our community still needs to talk about.
Do any of our colleagues from the AAMC have any comments about the GeoPrefs?
Sure. I mean, I'll say two things about it real quick, and I see Patrick came off mute too. I think one important thing is if you as an individual program director don't think GeoPref is important to review, you already have the opportunity right now to personalize your experience within the review process. And so you can screen or remove access to GeoPreference, so you and no one on your staff even has to look at it. So that's one way to avoid the risk of that interfering with those decisions or that decision making if you don't think it's a tool that you want to use. The other thing I'll add is that we are doing some work. We've heard from the community mixed reactions to GeoPreference over the last couple of years. That we added it, as I said earlier, as a way to increase standardization and fairness in the application process. Over the next probably 6 to 8 months, we're undertaking some work to look at the data from the last 2 years, as well as do some focus groups to think about whether or not there are different ways to organize the divisions and or other mechanisms to collect geographic preference that might work better for the programs. So I would say if you all do have ideas, it would be a great opportunity to work together to build something that works for you, rather than abandoning it when we know geographic preference plays a really big role in the selection process.
Yeah, I think you said it all. I mean, we know geography is important. We know applicants have wanted a way to kind of express that rather than having it inferred. But also I know that talking to a couple of specialties that they do not, within their specialty want to use it. And so we're looking at ways we can customize it for them.
All right, that brings us to 3 o'clock. So I think we'll wrap it up. Thank you for everyone who came and asked great questions. And a special thank you again to our colleagues from the AAMC and from Thalamus for coming to present the data and the information about the collaboration so that we can continue to move forward and make the best decisions for our individual programs and for our specialty.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming. Thanks for inviting us.
Thanks all. Great to be here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.